He left me for a younger woman. Then she learned who was paying his bills. The night my husband left me for a woman 12 years younger, he told me I had nothing left to offer him. 3 months later, that woman was standing in my kitchen crying. She wasn't there to apologize. She was there because she had just discovered something my husband had spent years hiding. I was the reason he could afford the life he had promised her. And once she found out who had really been paying his bills, she realized she hadn't stolen my husband. She had inherited my problem. My name is Rachel, and I was married to Daniel for 11 years. When we first met, Daniel was charming in that effortless way some people are. He remembered little things. My coffee order. The name of my childhood dog. The fact that I hated driving in heavy rain. Back then, he made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I worked as a project manager for a medical equipment company, and Daniel ran a small marketing business. At least that's what I thought. For years, whenever money got tight, I was the one who quietly covered the gap. A car repair, a business loan, his credit card balance, a late mortgage payment. Daniel always had an explanation. Just a rough month. The client hasn't paid yet. Once this contract comes through, I'll pay you back. And I believed him. Because marriage, at least to me, wasn't about keeping score. Then Daniel started coming home late. At first he blamed clients. Then networking events. Then traffic. Eventually, he stopped explaining altogether. His phone became a second heartbeat. Always in his hand. Always face down. Always protected by a password I didn't know. And whenever I asked what was happening, he'd get irritated. Rachel, you're imagining things. I wasn't. One Friday night, he came home wearing a shirt I'd never seen before. He smelled like expensive cologne. I looked at him and asked, "Where were you?" He stared at me for a few seconds. Then he said something I will never forget. "I think I want a different life." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I thought he was joking. Then he told me about her. Her name was Emily. She was 29. She worked at a company Daniel had recently started doing business with. And apparently, he'd been seeing her for almost 6 months. 6 months. While sleeping beside me. While letting me pay his credit card. While telling me we were trying to save our marriage. I asked him one question. "Does she know you're married?" He looked away. That was my answer. The next morning, Daniel packed a suitcase. Before leaving, he said, "I need to be with someone who makes me feel young again." I stood in the hallway, watching the man I married walk away. And for the first time, I didn't chase him. I didn't beg. I didn't ask him to stay. I simply said, "Good luck." He smiled like he'd won. I didn't realize then that he was walking away from the only person keeping his entire financial life from collapsing. The divorce process started quickly. Daniel wanted the house. He wanted the newer car. He wanted to keep his business. He wanted almost everything. But there was one problem. The business wasn't doing nearly as well as he'd told me. During the financial disclosure process, I discovered something shocking. Daniel's company had been losing money for years. Thousands of dollars every month. And the reason it survived? Me. My salary had been covering our household expenses, while Daniel used business revenue to maintain the appearance of success. And I had unknowingly been paying for more than groceries and mortgage payments. I had been subsidizing his entire lifestyle. The sports car, the expensive dinners, the hotel rooms, even some of his business trips. Once I understood the numbers, I stopped feeling heartbroken. I started feeling embarrassed. Not because I had loved him, because I had trusted him without checking what was happening behind the scenes. The divorce eventually went through. I kept my retirement account, my savings, and my share of the house. Daniel kept his business. And Emily, at least that's what I assumed. A few months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Daniel and Emily had moved into a luxury apartment downtown. Apparently, Daniel was telling everyone he was happier than ever. He posted pictures online. Restaurants, weekend trips, new clothes, smiling selfies with Emily. One picture had a caption that said, "Finally living the life I deserve." I looked at it for about 3 seconds. Then I closed my laptop. I didn't care anymore. Or at least I thought I didn't. Then one Tuesday evening, someone knocked on my door. I opened it. Emily was standing there. No makeup, messy hair, red eyes. She looked nothing like the confident woman in Daniel's photographs. I froze. She whispered, "Can I come in?" I almost said no. Instead, I stepped aside. She walked into my living room and sat down. For almost 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I didn't know." I knew immediately what she meant. Didn't know what? She looked at me. That you were still paying his bills. I felt my stomach drop. I don't pay his bills anymore. She shook her head. You did. Then she pulled out her phone. She showed me screenshots, bank statements, credit card charges, automatic payments. Daniel had apparently been using a joint business account that was still connected to an old payment arrangement. But there was more. Emily had discovered that Daniel had accumulated almost $40,000 in new debt since leaving me. And somehow, he had convinced her that his business was about to explode. He had even promised to put her name on the lease for their apartment. Except there was a problem. He couldn't afford the apartment, the car, the restaurants, the vacations, any of it. Emily looked at me and whispered, "How did he afford all this when you stopped supporting him?" I stared at the documents. Then I understood. He hadn't stopped. He had been using money from the sale proceeds and accounts we'd built together. Money he had access to during the divorce process. Money he'd hidden. And when that ran out, he'd started borrowing. Emily's voice broke. "Rachel, he told me you were controlling. He said you didn't support his dreams." I looked at her. "Did he tell you I paid his business expenses?" She didn't answer. "Did he tell you I paid off his credit cards?" Silence. "Did he tell you I covered the mortgage while he spent money on you?" Emily started crying. I didn't feel victorious. Honestly, I felt sad for her. Because I knew exactly what it felt like to believe Daniel's version of reality. Then she said something that changed everything. "He wants me to give him money." I frowned. "How much?" $20,000. I almost laughed. "Why?" "He says it's for a business emergency." I leaned back. "Emily, don't give him $1." She stared at me. "Why?" "Because the emergency isn't his business." I paused. "It's his lifestyle." That night, Emily left. 2 days later, Daniel called me. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice sounded angry. "Why did you talk to Emily?" I smiled. "She came to me." "You had no right." "No right." I laughed quietly. "You left me for her." There was silence. Then he said, You ruined everything. I looked around my living room, my home, my life, the quiet I'd finally learned to appreciate. No, Daniel, I said. You did. He started yelling, but I didn't argue. I simply told him, your new life isn't my responsibility anymore. Then I hung up. A week later, Emily moved out. The apartment was gone. The luxury car was sold. Daniel's business eventually closed. And the woman he had left me for, she disappeared from his life almost as quickly as she had entered it. Months later, I ran into Emily at a coffee shop. She looked different, calmer. She apologized, not for stealing Daniel, but for believing him. I told her something I wish someone had told me sooner. Never judge a person's financial success by what they show you. She nodded. Then she smiled sadly. You know what's crazy? What? He always told me he was the one taking care of you. I laughed. That's the funniest part. We both sat there quietly for a moment. Then Emily asked, do you hate him? I thought about it. Years ago, I would have said yes. But now, no. I shook my head. I just don't trust him anymore. And somehow that felt better than hate. Because hate would have meant he still had power over me. He didn't. Daniel thought leaving me meant he was trading an older life for a younger one. He thought Emily was the beginning of something better. He thought money would keep the illusion alive. But he never understood the truth. The person he thought was holding him back was the person holding everything together. And when I finally stopped paying his bills, his perfect life stopped too. Not because I destroyed it. Because for the first time, I stopped pretending it was mine to save.